This episode of Hero Movie Podcast is brought to you by listeners like me. We get the pre- and post shows each week, access to special bonus episodes, and a vote for movies Sean, Bruce, and Adam review for HMP, all for less than the price of a trip to Starbucks. Support HMP now. Join supporters like me by going to patreon.com/HMP today.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. My name is Adam Portrais, and I'm joined as always by Sean Keenan.
Heidi remembers the Berlin Wall.
And of course, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and this movie reminds me how much fun Eastern Europe was in the early 90s, man.
Oh, let me tell you, we have an interesting show for you today. Yet another in a 2-week line of movies that maybe people did not realize were comic book movies. We are back this week talking about Atomic Blonde, starring Charlize Theron and a whole bunch of other people, man. We will definitely be getting into that. I am looking forward to this because I think this will be a very interesting review because this movie was not exactly as what I thought it was going to be. But first, before we get into that, we have to do what we just absolutely love doing on this show. It's one of my favorite things. It's when we drop down to the iTunes and we look at the reviews, and we find one here, and it's a 5-star review, a.k.a. Humdinger.
Humdinger.
And this is our 100th review on iTunes, everybody.
Cue the balloons.
That's it. Is that a balloon?
I wish I had a kazoo at moments like this.
See, that's your problem in life, is you're not keeping a kazoo at your side at all times. And I think this one's very apropos for our show. It's entitled, What a Great Accident. This is from Valor Morgulis 117. Sure.
You're not a big Game of Thrones fan, are you there, Adam?
I am not. I saw the first season and the first half of second season. Then I was like, I can't give all my time to this. I'm going to wait till it's all done, and then I'm going to do it.
Okay. Well, that's a little bit of a spoiler there, the username.
Okay. Fair enough. And this person who did something, quite something, wrote it like this. I found this podcast by mistake while searching for another. I have to say, these guys are great. Very funny and knowledgeable, and really have a good time doing their podcast. Well, thank you, man. We really appreciate that. And, but we're a lot of people's accidents, it seems.
That's our main form of marketing, is just hoping people stumble on us by accident. We try to hide as best we can who we really are until it's too late.
Yeah, that's we put a little fake mustache on and walk up and go, "Hi, how you doing?" Oh, by the way, we're a podcast.
It's like that time when your dad got a room at a Holiday Inn spelled with 3 L's because he didn't realize what he was doing.
Boy, we had some of those growing up, man. We did. We on a family vacation checked into a hotel once, and we were not there for more than 5 minutes, and it was just like, okay, everybody back in the car. We're getting out of here now. After you've been driving for 10 hours or something, you're just like, I'm tired. I just want to go to sleep. It's like, we will not wake up tomorrow if we stay here.
We stayed in a hotel room in West Memphis, Arkansas one time where every single room had bars on the windows except ours. And that really did not make me feel good.
Man. I stayed at a hotel last year for work where my boss got us all the hotel rooms, and she didn't do her, she didn't really look around. And it was by far the worst hotel room I've ever been in. And I've been in some bad ones. And so I get to work the next day and I said, hey, that was the worst hotel room I've ever stayed in. And she was like, I've stayed in worse. And I said to her, wait a minute. You have stayed in maybe the same level of bad, but there's nothing worse than where we stayed.
I had to share my bed with a homeless gentleman.
It was really, really bad.
Well, man, I've stayed in hotels in East Berlin, so to get us back on topic, I bet it doesn't get much worse than that.
It doesn't. I mean, I can say this because I know we don't have a hard line, Berlin contingency that listens to this podcast, but they're the worst. No.
Just East Berlin in the early 90s when it was fun, but they hadn't updated their accommodations yet.
Yeah,
it wasn't as good as the hotel I stayed in Moscow.
Fair enough. So yes, today we are covering Atomic Blonde, everybody. Another movie that maybe not a lot of people knew that was a comic book movie, but it's got a lot of comic booky type of stuff in it, especially, one of the guys who's directing this bad boy. So let's go ahead and take a listen to the trailer for Atomic Blonde.
Someone set me up. Someone from the inside.
Lorraine, there's a double agent hunting our operatives in Berlin. Your mission, find out who did this. Remember, trust no one. Your contact is David Percival. Well, what was your first impression?
Disastrous.
Berlin has its own set of rules.
I trust you that as far as I can throw you. You sent me into a hornet's nest. But then you knew that, didn't you? Fasten your seatbelt.
The clock is ticking.
I'm impressed.
Alrighty, that was the trailer for Atomic Blonde, our new release review of this week. Here's the IMDb plotline. As we know, IMDb always 100% correct in everything they say and or do. An undercover MI6 agent is sent to Berlin during the Cold War to investigate the murder of a fellow agent and recover a missing list of double agents. This is starring Charlize Theron, James McAvoy, John Goodman, Toby Jones, Sofia, Boutella, written by Kurt Johnstad, directed by David Leitch, based on the Oni Comic Press of The Coldest City by Anthony Johnson and Sam Hart. But I want to know more about this, and that's when we go to our good boy, Bruce Leslie.
Well, Atomic Blonde.
Hold on, you got to wait for your bit. I'm prepared to this week. Just come on.
So that one's on me, man. I have to give everyone my apologies.
There you go. Now jump in it.
Now, Atomic Blonde is based on The Coldest City, a comic written by Anthony Johnstad and published by Oni Press. And something I found really cool is that it was lettered by Ed Brisson. He's a writer that I kind of know who's currently writing Old Man Logan and Iron Fist, and I had no idea he was ever a letterer, so it's kind of cool to run across that. But Anthony Johnstad is from the United Kingdom, which I think is worth knowing considering the central character in the story and the events of Atomic Blonde, the movie adaptation. He's probably best known for Wasteland, a comic that ran for about 9 years with Oni Press and had covers by Ben Temple-Smith, a well-known artist. And Wasteland takes place in this post-apocalyptic America where everything is a desert, but The Coldest City takes place in the past, in the week leading up to the fall of the Berlin Wall. It's set in Berlin, which, of course, during the Cold War, probably was the coldest city. Now, here's a synopsis of the comic. Communism is collapsing, and soon the Berlin Wall will be torn down by both the East and West. But before that can happen, there's one last situation for MI6 to resolve. 2 weeks ago, an undercover MI6 officer was killed in Berlin. He was carrying information from a source in the East, a list that allegedly contains the name of every espionage agent working in Berlin on all sides. But no list was found on his body, so MI6 sent in Lorraine Broughton, an experienced spy with no existing ties to Berlin, to root out the list. She walked into a powder keg of social unrest, counter-espionage, defections gone bad, and secret assassinations. Then, on the night the wall came down, her superior, MI6's chief officer in Berlin, was shot and killed in the street. Now Lorraine has returned to tell her story, and nothing is quite what it seems. So I think the comic book synopsis sounds pretty close to the movie to me, but one thing that is extremely important to understand, in the comic, Lorraine is not blonde, and Percival kind of looks like an accountant rather than James McAvoy.
Good fixes on both sides, say I.
Now, that makes me, is it okay if we just jump into some broad questions here?
Sure.
Yes, please.
Because I wonder why they decided to call this movie Atomic Blonde. Like, it almost feels like somebody thought, oh man, I just came up with a $700 million title for a movie. I just need a movie to put with the title. Like, it really feels like somebody wanted there to be a movie called Atomic Blonde, and then they got the rights to this, and they say, all you got to do is change the character to a blonde, and there you go. You know, because the name doesn't quite fit the source material at all.
And here's another question on your question, which is, you have a movie called Atomic Blonde. Why didn't you get the rights for Atomic by Blondie? It seems like such an easy get.
You know, it very much does, but you never know with Debbie. Is it Debbie Harry from Blondie?
Correct.
Yes.
I heard she's still trying to stick it to the man. She doesn't want to be a sellout. She
Well-
insisted she get the lead role if they were going to use her song.
She's doing well, and honestly is like gosh, can still really sing and is still good looking and everything, man. She's really kicking. I've always loved her.
Hey, I'll take Debbie Harry all day long over Stevie Nicks, even though you know, I do like my Fleetwood Mac songs.
I do not want to fall down that hole, because we could go on an hour. I could go on an hour-long rant about Fleetwood Mac and Stevie Nicks in particular.
I thought you were going to go on a rant about Debbie Harry. Even though it's hard to get the rights to Atomic by Blondie, Rapture, she's willing to sell, so they could have at least used that.
They got to go halvesies in on Rapture, though. I think that's the problem.
I know for years that was the answer to a trivia question. The only rap song ever played on VH1 was Rapture. Blondie's rap song.
Well, there you go.
So I mean, you know, this movie has it. I would let me start from the beginning here. So I would consider myself a pretty smart guy. You know, like I'm not a dummy. I am for certain things, for sure. But when it comes to movies, I get it. I have to be honest with you. This movie lost me. It's like, and not even at certain points. There's things that, like, it leaves me scratching my head at the end of this movie with certain things that happen, and we'll get to it when we get to it. As a general question, why is this plot so overly complicated for what it is?
That comes from the source material, man.
So the source material is super complicated.
And one thing that readers of the comic, reviews that were posted of the comic before the movie was released that I kind of perused, and I'll just put this out here. Hopefully it's not too much of a left-sided spoiler for people, but people basically said, okay, so this guy really liked The Usual Suspects and wanted to do that with his comic book. But that comparison came up under multiple reviewers that they felt like he was trying a little too hard to give us a Kaiser Soze in this comic book.
Right.
Well, and again, and I don't want to spoil too awful much with this movie, because especially if people haven't seen it, because I think ultimately a lot of the fun part about this movie is that it does have there are reveals within the movie itself. And honestly, I counted no less than 4 times where I was genuinely like, oh, wow. And to me, that was an impressive bit of being able to give me a story that I was not expecting. Now, via the initial trailers and everything, I didn't really watch a ton of the trailers, but with the first one that I saw, and also coming from one of the co-credited or the co-director, uncredited co-director of John Wick, I thought, well, this is going to be very much John Wick style. That's what the trailer very much shows me. And while I thoroughly enjoy John Wick, very light on the story, John Wick. You murdered my dog, I'm going to go murder all of you. Right.
And what I'll say, a lot of what I enjoyed about this movie and a lot of what I expected to enjoy about this movie really weren't plot dependent. I mean, that trailer, in my opinion, whoever made that trailer deserves like whatever the trailer equivalent of an Academy Award is, because I loved the trailer. I thought it was a great trailer. In fact, I don't know everything about the movie industry for sure, but I do understand that the person who edits and puts together the trailer is not the same group of people who edit and put together the movie.
Unless you're Suicide Squad.
I kind of wish they'd let the trailer guy help him out with a few scenes in the movie, because man, there's a scene that's supposed to be kind of a fulcrum scene in the movie that they show in the trailer, and the music and the editing of the trailer is superior. I like the Personal Jesus remix that we get in the trailer. I think it suits the scene better than George Michael's father figure does. You guys know what I'm talking about there?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and I was really bummed that we didn't actually get to hear that cool Depeche Mode remix of Personal Jesus anywhere in the movie, and it's featured in the trailer. Like I expected it to be over the opening scene and the closing credits or something, the way it's featured in the trailer. That's 70% of why I went to see the movies. I wanted to hear that song again.
I'm going to say something very indicative of my age. Not a big Depeche Mode fan. I don't get it.
Here's the thing, man. I'm the age where if you were going to be a Depeche Mode fan, you would be my age. But I hated Depeche Mode in 1992 because I like cool stuff like Motley Crue and Rat.
I like cool stuff.
But now going back, I would much rather listen to Depeche Mode than Motley Crue or Rat, So it's just interesting. I saw Depeche Mode in concert like 93, 94, something like that. And kind of made jokes at my own expense about, can you believe it? This girl's dragging me to a Depeche Mode concert. They're not bad, man. They were good. And now looking back, I like them more now than I ever did back then.
Depeche Mode always struck me as a West Coast band.
Yeah.
Like a lot of my friends from California seem to be much bigger Depeche Mode fans than my friends from the East Coast.
Huh. I didn't know a lot of West Coast people. So I saw Depeche Mode in Cleveland, so I was surrounded by not quite West Coasterners. Is that how you say that?
West Coastonites?
Yeah. But anyway, they do pair the music though pretty good here. It does give you kind of the feels, and just
I found the music so annoying. It's there's certain scenes where it feels like you're listening to the music because that's the ambient music that's playing in the movie, and then it turns out that it's not. Like there's a bunch of those moments in this movie, and it's where it almost feels like there's needle drops and then there's the soundtrack stuff, and it's this it's just too there's not enough. They want the music. They don't want it to make sense, is what it felt like to me.
I don't know. It didn't bother me at all in that way. Other than, like I said, that George Michael song, which they totally play it off as ambient music that gets blended into the soundtrack there because she goes to turn up the sound system real loud, I guess, so the neighbors won't hear her beating up the cops. Right. But it didn't distract me. I liked it. The only part I was distracted was from seeing the trailer so much, when she cranks it up, I am not expecting George Michael. I do want to compliment, though, the folks that are in your line of work on this, Sean, because they captured the feeling of the Soviet bloc at its crumbling stages really, really well here. Now, when I was there, we're talking maybe 3-4 years after when this movie is set. But, I traveled through the former Soviet bloc a little bit back in the early 90s, and it was a blast because everybody had like this 5-year party after the whole Iron Curtain fell. But man, did they not there's no way East Berlin looks like that now, so they worked hard to recreate that feel, and they did it with an authenticity that I was impressed with. And even the clothes, the people out there, the whole feel of it. I mean, they had people who knew what they were talking about that were helping them put this together.
One of my problems with this movie is not the way it looks. This movie looks amazing. It's it's really, really beautiful what they do to it, and and at some points it's ugly. It's so beautiful because it's so ugly, And they go ahead.
And they had authentic little things that I don't think perpetrated mass pop culture that were in this movie. That told me they did have some authorities help them build the scene that were familiar with what was really going on, like the strange value that blue jeans held for a few years in Eastern Europe. Like it mesmerized me that I could take a pair of worn out blue jeans with me to the flea market in Moscow and like trade them for a pair of night vision goggles. I mean, there was just weird stuff that went on there at that time. And they kind of captured that with James McAvoy and his kind of Western products that, you know, they're nothing fancy, but they just have that whole value because they represent the West and they're kind of forbidden. And it's sort of, I don't know, a little bit of a fascination with something that was foreign to them. And they kind of captured that with what McAvoy's little black market thing was. I liked it.
You want some Jordache jeans, ladies?
One of the things that I also really like about this movie is that they have the right director for the action scenes. Mm-hmm. You know, the way that this guy directs action, he's going to be working for a long time because it seems to be a style that we don't see much of anymore, you know, where you know everything that's happening in the scene. There doesn't seem to be a ton of directors who can do that competently anymore. And David, how do you pronounce it? Leitch, sure.
Leitch. And is he the guy doing Deadpool 2?
Yes, he's currently doing Deadpool 2, and things are going swimmingly. He's got a lot of nice things to say about Brolin.
Oh, very good, man. Very good.
Leitch. Yeah, and he also directed that short, the Deadpool short that everyone's seen already.
Okay. But, you know, when this movie starts out, and they've got Lorraine. I was trying to remember her name. I don't want to not call her Charlize, but they've got Lorraine. She's all beaten up. She's down in the pit, which is what they call this interrogation room. Now, in the comic, you know, that's pretty much how the comic opens, is with Lorraine in the pit. But right at the beginning, they say Percival was killed last night. And then they ask her, were you present when Percival died? So, you know, the movie kind of plays up this mystery like we don't realize that Percival died until he dies in the movie. But the comic doesn't want that to be part of the mystery. Like, they want us to know from the get-go that Percival died, and we understand what we're going to learn is how and why he died. The way they ask her if she was present when he died, and she says no, you kind of know that she must have been the one who killed him, the way it's going down. So this movie tries to add a little bit more of a twist to it, I think, than it needed to with the story. But I don't think it would have taken away at all if they had opened it up by saying, okay, were you there when Percival died? And then we get to meet Percival knowing he's doomed.
Well, I've got more than that for you. I think that they needed to go the opposite way with it, which is that knowing that she has gotten out of whatever it is that she got into completely takes any tension away from most of this movie. To me, it feels like the first, like the prequels of Star Wars, where look, we know where all of this is headed, you know, and knowing that she's going to get out of all this in every single scene that she's in after this first scene takes away a little bit. For me, it does, and I know that that's not the way that the source material did it, but reading something in a comic book and watching something in a movie are two totally different experiences.
Oh, absolutely, and also that's kind of a throwback to that, trying to, you know, people that make the I guess that make the observation that it seems to really be trying to parallel the usual suspects. I mean, that starts with an investigation, right? I mean, kind of the guy in the interrogation room. But watching the movie, I wondered, and I haven't read the whole comic. I just read like the first installment of it or whatever to get a feel for it. But I wondered if I hadn't read the comic, would I understand what was in flashback and what wasn't? You know, because I could see somebody going in and thinking that we're seeing this interrogation before some of the events happen. You know what I mean? Was it clear to you guys that this interrogation was at the end of the adventure?
Not at first. I mean, it comes up pretty quickly. I figured it out, but right away I didn't know that.
But that was also interesting, and something that I liked was that, you know, boy, they beat her up good. Not that I'm saying I like that they beat her up, but she's in there and she's definitely, you know, been through everything. And then of course we go back in time and everything, and you know, she's pristine as all get out and whatnot. And so I think that's where I kind of put it together. But I love the, you know, I definitely see where you're coming from, Sean, with the kind of it bothers you knowing that they can easily get out of that. But something to me always kind of seemed like in the background that there may be more of a mystery to it than was actually kind of led on. So while you do know that, and it is kind of stuck in the back of your head of like, she'll be fine, it still kind of worked for me.
And also, I mean, there's the trouble too when this is a lesser known property, but Usually when I go to see a comic book movie, I'm not asking myself, is Spider-Man going to die before the end of this movie?
Look, man, I know. But, I mean, that's the conceit, isn't it? Watching all these movies is that, yes, Iron Man looks like he's not going to get out of this one, but guess what? He gets out of it.
That Spider-Man lived at the end.
See, I want to write a movie like this where the person's in the interrogation room and then like in the middle of the story, they die and they go, wait, you're telling us you died? And they go, yeah, that's when I died. And have to try to understand. Now you're telling us, well, how are you here now if you died? And then they go, that's a question, isn't it? And then we got to go see how they came back to life.
I always love the idea of like, taking a movie, like you see the trailer and it's all about this one person, and then maybe 20 minutes in, that person dies and we have another star take over the movie that you had zero idea was in that movie. It doesn't work today with the old internet and everything, but man, that I've always thought that would have been the coolest thing to be like, oh, this is a De Niro movie, and then De Niro dies 20 minutes into it, and then you're with, another huge star for the rest of the movie.
Emmanuel Lewis
comes in
and
saves the day.
That movie exists. It's called To Live and Die in L.A.
Oh, fair enough.
That's an awesome movie.
I haven't seen it.
It's great.
I bought it for $7 at a 7-Eleven gas station. On Blu-ray, no less.
You remember that you bought it at a 7-Eleven.
Because I was inebriated when I did it. No, because that's when I bought Live to Die in L.A. and the new Phantom movie that's like was straight to video. I walked into a 7-Eleven going, I gotta get something to drink, and then I was like, what? They have a Blu-ray section? Well, I'm gonna be thumbing through this boy.
That's when you're a real film connoisseur, when you browse the Blu-rays at 7-Eleven.
Yeah, and I was just like, oh, Live and Die in L.A. Yeah, Blu-ray, $7? Heck yeah, I'm going to get that. Oh, what is this Phantom thing? Oh, we're going to use this on H&P one day. Mine.
I'm going to guess they didn't have a lot of Criterion issues there.
Not a lot. Not a lot. A little bit of Larry the Cable Guy in there for you.
See, I like to browse the DVD section of Cracker Barrel, but that's a totally different kind of thing.
And then I bought a $5 pizza and then went home.
But what'd you guys think of Charlize? Man,
Theron.
What did you guys think of our lead actress here? I got to tell you, I didn't know she could pull off that physicality. I was impressed.
You want to go first, Adam? Because I have a lot to say.
Sure. Yeah, I love her in everything she's in, whether it's, kicking faces in with this, just looking gorgeous as all get out, or, Eileen Wuornos and just looking absolutely awful. This woman is an Oscar-winning actress, and she's doing things that Oscar-winning actresses don't do. Number one, she's it's kind of gone the way of the dodo in the last couple of years. But for the longest time, if you won a Best Actress award, your career kind of went to crap. And it hasn't happened to her and a couple of others as of recently, so that kind of doesn't really hold water too much now. But she's done so much, and I love what she's doing here. And another thing that, and this is going to sound like it is what it is, but her and, and another, person or two in this movie of their caliber, of their height of stardom and everything, actually doing casual nudity is very rare these days. And I applaud that for actually just being a thing. You didn't, it wasn't gross or over the top or anything, but it's something that usually is always kind of like, hidden, like we're almost like, oh no, we can't do that. I'm too big of a star. And it was refreshing just to see what you would see if you were in that situation.
Well, it's my professional medical opinion that she has nothing to be embarrassed by.
No, but she's really great, and here's the thing. You're right. She did all of her own stunts. She did get beat up an awful lot on these things. Had to have some teeth replaced and whatnot from what I read. And while she is, probably, $120 soaking wet and everything, she fought as well as she could, and they didn't have her, for the most part, do the overpowering, kick butt lady sort of deal, right? So she could go through and fight with these guys, but it wasn't over the top, the unrealistic kind of fighting that we see from a lot of female, action movie kind of things, where it's like, oh, I'm kicking, a 300-pound guy down a flight of stairs. She's got to hit these guys with stuff. And some of her punches and stuff don't really land as heavily as they could, and they do pick her up and throw her. So she gives as good as she gets as good as she gives in this thing. And I thought that was a nice, refreshing thing for a while. But overall, I really liked what she was doing, man.
I was impressed. What do you think, Sean?
Well, you guys know that I have a huge problem with the 100-pound girl fighting a 400-pound man. And, like, I'll take you out. Like, that makes me insane. And I always refer back to Jennifer Garner whenever it comes to this kind of thing, because Jennifer Garner looks like she knows how to throw a punch.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to tell me before Mad Max, before I saw her in Fury Road, that she would be able to do something like this and look convincing doing it, I would have thought that you were ridiculous. But she completely passes the smell test in this. The fighting is realistic, that where, yes, that lady is going to take a gun with her into a fist fight because she has to. That is something that I found realistic and interesting. Like you were saying earlier, sometimes she has to grab something so that it has more effect when she hits somebody with it. It's very well done, the fighting, and I believed everything in this when it comes to the fighting. I thought that was going to be my biggest problem with this movie, and it wasn't in any way. The fighting is terrific, and she specifically is terrific fighting.
And I think something I would put front and center to contrast to this, just to help illustrate the exact point you're making, Sean, is just compare this to Mila Jovovich in Resident Evil.
Exactly.
It's 180 degrees the other direction.
Exactly. Or, one of the 50 movies where, you have like hot little girl in action movie. And it's the part that it seemed like no one was getting at the time. Like, look, we want to see movies with girls in the lead, but you have to have someone as your lead who looks like they could beat that dude up, or at least a convincing way to do it. That's why Wonder Woman works so well. That's why this movie works so well. It's why Fury Road works so well.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to work so great when you have Sue Richards try to kick a dude who's 400 pounds in the face and he just falls. Like that's not realistic. That's not something I want to see.
I think the most egregious example of that was the Charlie's Angels movies with Cameron Diaz and Lucy Liu.
They're the worst.
And Drew Barrymore. Yeah.
But I mean, but I'll be honest with you, this is also something that's given me a little bit of apprehension with Whedon's Batgirl movie whenever that ends up coming out and whoever they cast for that role, because I got to be able to buy that, man.
Yeah.
And it's an uphill battle. But I thought this was handled really well. But I think one of the reasons that happens, and one of the reasons that it does, that there's somebody who goes through and thinks out of this, is this guy comes from the world of stunts. And
is anyone else nervous that Joss Whedon has at least given her an audition, Eliza Dushku? Because that dude loves Eliza Dushku.
Oh, he does, and I would not.
Man, I love Eliza Dushku too, but he never casts her as the lead. You know what I mean? She could be somewhere in Gotham City, but she's not going to be Batgirl.
She was talking to dead people in that Zach Galifianakis thing on Fox. She was leading that Dollhouse. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I liked her in Dollhouse. I like Eliza Dushku, but she wasn't the Slayer in Buffy. I mean, she was the backup Slayer. Anyway, I'm all for Eliza Dushku, just not as Batgirl.
But the
word on the street
tiny.
is he's sticking with Silverstone. He really wants to stick with her.
Alicia
I think
Silverstone?
That's a smart move.
He really liked her in that Diary of a Wimpy Kid movie. She has the chops.
Bring me a 40-year-old Alicia Silverstone, please.
Yeah, she's no longer Batgirl. She's now like Bat Cougar.
She's
something.
Bat retiree.
Now, what? Also, not only does Charlize Theron do this, take on this acting role, but I mean, she's kind of was the go-to producer on this. At least in interviews with Leitch. I'll call him Leitch. But in interviews with him, basically, when he wanted to do something, she's who he had to ask. Like she was the go-to producer on it too. So she must have really wanted to do this.
Yeah, she's been trying to muscle this thing through for years and years.
Do you think she gets to make this if she hadn't made Fury Road?
No. I think that Fury Road really put her into a different place because, Charlize Theron, although she's been a good actress forever, she hadn't shown anybody that she was capable of doing something like this. It's the reason why you keep casting the same three women in action movies is because it looks like they're the right ones. And now she is one of those people.
And it's pretty well agreed on now that Fury Road was Furiosa's movie more than Max's, right?
Oh, yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. What about our friend Professor X here, James McAvoy? I found him enjoyable.
Let me tell you something.
There wasn't a lot asked of him, but I liked what we got.
Every time, I don't care what he's in, James McAvoy comes on screen, I love it. There's something about that dude. I just love everything he's in. Whatever he's doing, man, I'm on board with that guy.
I love the fact that McAvoy, now that he's in, the second act of his career, has decided I am going to be the complete nut job guy in every movie that's not an X-Men movie.
It's so good.
I like that too.
And it seems like to me, he's basically auditioning for something like, I want to be the Joker, or I want to be Satan in Witches of Eastwick. Like, that's really what it feels like.
James McAvoy in the remake of Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
And if you don't believe it, all you have to do is look at his delivery of his last line in the movie, which is "I effing love Berlin" as he's dying. and I mean, he really got into it too, man. He looked the grungy part like I was buying it. I was believing it. I had fun with him, man. He really had that Apocalypse Now feeling, like Brando's character in Apocalypse Now. Like he's working for the government, but he's had just too much autonomy, and he's become his own little dictator of sorts.
I mean, he just looked like he didn't shower for like a week.
He did do a good job of blending in as a East German at that time.
McAvoy's great too. I think that you can't bring in someone better than him. I was trying to think about it while watching it today. Is that who do you bring in for this part that's going to do as great a job as he did? Because it seems like
Jai Courtney.
Well, don't you dare get me started.
Sometimes you just you stretch it a little bit too far on this show, Leslie. And
I'm trying to make up for all the hate I got for banging on Jai Courtney in the past by recommending it.
Doesn't it seem like McAvoy and Jared Leto are up for a lot of the same roles lately?
Yeah.
And I would dare say that the three of us probably prefer McElroy.
Oh, without a doubt, man. Without a doubt.
It's your chance to be contrarian, Adam.
No. I mean, at the end of the, you're not wrong.
Okay.
I've worked with McAvoy, and he is a very nice man.
Now, I'm going to tell you something I was just a little bit disappointed in. Not a lot, but just a little bit disappointed that we didn't get more out of Sofia Boutella. People might know her best as Gazelle from Kingsman. Mm-hmm. And Kingsman is a movie I think about like opposite ends of the spectrum on MI6 movies would be The Coldest City or Atomic Blonde and Kingsman. They're taking two vastly different approaches to it. She's in both of them. She got to be very physical in Kingsman. Here, she didn't really get to show off because between her and Charlize Theron, she is in the real world probably the more athletic. Like she's been a dancer all her life. She can pull off some pretty impressive stunts. And they gave her very little time to shine in fight scenes and such.
I kept wanting her to use her mummy powers.
I'm telling you, man,
she was the best part of the Mummy.
She's had such a great little career lately, man. She's really kind of blown up from Kingsman, like I said, with the Mummy stuff, and she was in Star Trek that nobody noticed her. It's just like, who is this chick that's really good in Star Trek? She's covered in pancake makeup, so we can't. And, it's her. Oh man, she's great, and she was so good in that movie.
And I would say I'm a big fan of hers, but really I'm a big fan of her performance in Kingsman. I still haven't seen her get the opportunity to repeat that, but I think that there's a spot for her in Hollywood to do some really cool action stuff. And I did feel like, she is French Algerian, so making her the French agent made sense. But I felt like they missed an opportunity to have her be just as tough as Lorraine. Although they did not miss the opportunity to let us know that she is, in fact, in good shape.
Indeed.
Can we get to that? Because we're tiptoeing around it.
Okay.
I've got to say this. I am so tired of this in movies like this. I am so tired of the quasi-sexuality. Like, yes, we get it. Like, she's down for anything. We understand. I mean, yes, it's titillating. It's fun to watch. But can we do something else now?
Here's what I would say. I'm happy that Hollywood is giving folks a bisexual hero to cheer for. However, if you objectify women as bisexuals, that's just as bad as objectifying them as heterosexuals or homosexuals or any other sexual. You know what I mean? It's still selling flesh a little bit at the end of the day.
And that's what I'm saying here is that it feels a little ungenuine.
And honestly, the amount of the girly stuff that's in the Red Band trailer is probably equal in the number of moments of screen time that you get in the movie. They don't dwell on it in the movie like they do in the trailer.
Right.
True.
It actually feels, there's one little sequence that might be depicted as gratuitous, but for the most part, I think they deal with it pretty tastefully other than one little steamy scene. The rest of it's more just like more like intimacy, like they're in bed together, like just you can tell their fondness is there without seeing the physical acts. You know what I mean? Like the little pillow talk and stuff.
Now,
right. And that's fine by me.
Speaking of which, let's go ahead and, because this is a fantastic segue, and then we'll jump back into the rest of the review. This is a great segment for our mailbag here, actually. So let's do that.
Let's hear it.
Bale's here.
This is from Krista, who has actually a supporter on Patreon, patreon.com/HMP. And the email is entitled, She Dropped the Bomb on Me, which, by the way, great song that one is. Hey guys, just dropping a short note to say I'm waiting with bated breath for Bruce to tell me if I'd like the comic since I like the movie and that I did like the change of making the French agent a woman of color. As someone who isn't wired to factor gender into attraction, but is super picky on looks, because who isn't a sucker for a pretty face? It was awesome to hear. It was awesome to have her there, not just for the entertaining scenes, but also to show later that Lorraine treated the experience similarly to how she would have with a man. How she would have with a... all right, this is me. I'm sorry. Similarly, how she would have with a man she liked and cared for, even if she didn't love them. Just my 2 East German marks. Keep up all the great work, and thanks for so much that you do, Krissa.
Well, thank you, Krissa. Yeah, man, you should read the comic. It's in black and white, so you need to know that going into it. One of the complaints is people didn't realize they were getting a black and white comic. So there's no color in it at all. It's noir, and sometimes you can communicate noir with story. Sometimes you use shortcuts like making it a black and white comic. But it's very, very close to the movie, with the exception no one is near as attractive in the comic as they are in the movie, and I kind of like that.
I'll say that's
I
something
like real people.
That's something that always kind of gets me is when people just have to be like, I wasn't told it was in black and white, therefore I'm upset, or I had once where it was just like I recommended Pan's Labyrinth to someone and they were like, oh, dude, I started to watch it, but I didn't realize it wasn't in English, so it's just like I wasn't prepared for it, so I didn't really. I was like, oh, but you missed out on a creep. I'm like, it didn't even occur to me in my mind to go, oh yeah, you're gonna have to read subtitles throughout this entire thing. It was just good. Black and white's the same thing, man.
I keep recommending the movie Intacto. Have you ever seen that movie? Where you can exchange luck. Like luck is a commodity. And so there's a series of like blood sport style events, but it has to do with luck.
Yeah, I've heard of this, but
I believe it's Spanish. It is an amazing, amazing movie. But I have learned the same thing that you did, Adam, from that movie, because that movie is just great. Like, it's just a great, great movie. But for reasons I will never understand, there are certain people who I know will love that movie, and they cannot watch it because it's subtitled.
And I've also known people that when I tell them about a movie, a foreign movie that's subtitled, they say, well, I'll just wait. If it's any good, they'll make an American version. And those are people that don't understand just how bad the American versions usually are. Sometimes the American version might be better, but I can't think of any offhand.
Let me tell you something.
You mean like Rambo?
Or like the American version of Old Boy versus Old Boy.
Guys, I don't want to be the guy to tell you, but the Guatemalan version of Captain America, unbelievable.
Sounds awesome. Oh, man, and who would have thought we were going to get to review John Goodman movies 2 weeks in a row?
2 weeks in a row, man. He's been killing it.
And I got to say, his character looked almost identical in both movies.
Oh, that's how dare you.
You get some dour Goodman 2 weeks in a row.
Speaking of the Mummy that we mentioned, I can remember when I first saw the Mummy on the big screen. I thought, when did Russell Crowe become John Goodman? So that's another little throwback.
This is one of my favorite parts, is where Toby Jones and John Goodman are in the same room together. seeing those guys act together with Charlize Theron, it's like, oh boy, that's just a powder keg of acting right there. I love it.
You'd have to love to be on set during that day because you just got 3 awesome people right there, dude. It's just like that's just clinic running.
And I think in a manner of turnabout is fair play, they should have reenacted the love scene between Charlize Theron and Sofia Boutella with Toby Jones and John Goodman.
Oh my gosh, I would pay money to watch that.
I don't know why. See our own kind get it on.
Let's make it happen.
Like I got no shot with Charlize Theron or Sofia Boutella, but I could probably hook up with Toby Jones.
I don't know, buddy.
Well, if I were single, obviously I'm not if I'm married.
Hey, here's a wild one. Bavarian sound system that Toby Jones is in. It is just bizarre and out there. And don't say I didn't warn you. It's great though. Giving recommendations.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else really to point out before we kind of bring this on home, but I think we've covered it all. I do we got to talk about the scene. You know the scene, Adam. And before we start talking about it, I'm going to ban Adam from telling us where he can tell that they cheated and it was more than one take. But the director and the producer and the lead actress all swear that drawn out fight really was a one shot. And I loved it too because you see them getting more tired as the fight goes on because they were getting more tired as the fight goes on. I think that added a lot to the believability. A very ambitious scene. Actually found a new way to give us a hallway fight, so to speak, without it being the typical hallway fight. I really, really like that scene. I'll let you go first, Sean, so Adam can tell me all the ways they cheated, even though I banned him from it.
I will say this is the best fight scene we've seen this year in a movie.
And I love it that the damsel in distress was the guy and that the hero was the girl. It's nice to see that.
It's one of those moments like in Kingsman. Like, Kingsman might not be your favorite movie, but that fight scene in the church, that is absolutely your favorite scene in that movie. And it's the same thing with this. I have tons of problems with people's motivations and the triple switches that keep happening in this movie with what seems like everyone in the movie. But this fight scene here, this is the reason to see it. And I think it's great. If they did it in one take, even better. Like you said, I love that people are getting tired by the end of this because they would. I like that it's in a hallway and it doesn't end in the hallway. It ends in the street. And that is how Netflix Marvel needs to finish their hallway fights. Hopefully in Defenders, because we know there's another hallway fight.
There is.
They end up in the street and then they go, let's never fight in a hallway again.
Past your fights from this point out, everybody.
Right.
Just something in a wide open range. Here's what I'll tell you, Bruce.
Yeah.
I didn't count. And to me, that's a very good sign, is to where I was engaged in what was going on to where it felt like what they were doing was actually serving the story and not being a, wow, look at what I can do kind of thing. And that's, to me, like, and believe you me, I love a wow, look what we can do kind of thing. That's always cool. I mean, like, even, go all the way back to, like, something like The Matrix, where that stuff is wildly, it's silly. It doesn't need to be there. But boy, oh boy, it's an awful cool moment, right? And this wasn't those, oh, look at this cool moment. It was driving the story. It was what had to actually go along with what was there. What I liked about it, too, is that, and I'm not saying that this is, in the real world what they were doing, but it was sloppy, like it would be in real life. There were stuff that didn't go quite as planned. So it didn't feel like a complete choreographed event, even though it obviously was. So to me, that's when you have something that's really good and that can keep you coming back and interested and not counting the possible ways that they could have cheated stuff out. There's probably a door wipe someplace. That's how they usually do these things. But I didn't find myself counting that because I was engaged in the story and what was going on, and I think that even is a testament to it, even above the possibility of it actually being a single shot.
And not just the visual effect of being a single shot, but by at least having the ambition to shoot it as a single shot, seeing the lead actor at the very least, actually getting tired as the shot progresses in a way that no matter how good of an actor you are, it's hard to duplicate that with that much verisimilitude compared to what it's like when we actually just see her exhausted by the end of the take.
And now if they switched it up, interesting. But when she's down there and there's the two police officers behind, and you see it in the trailer and everything, where she's getting that little info and whatnot, and she pulls up the turtleneck, just under her eyes and whatnot. You think, oh, this is where they're going to cut, and we're going to see, obviously what that stunt person would be like. But that's a single shot. They keep right in there. We see her put it up. She goes and she beats him, and she puts it back down again. And it's
and from a narrative perspective, I'd never understood what her point would be in pulling that turtleneck.
I don't know.
If not to bring in a stunt person, I don't know why you do that unless the director or the producer or someone thought that it looked cool. I guess
it did seem odd as hell.
It did look cool.
It looked cool, but it did strike me. I go, oh well, this is clearly let the stunt person in, and then she did it and put it down, and I'm just like, don't know what the point of that was, but okay, it looked cool.
I thought that was to hide the stuntman's mustache.
She almost
Chuck,
she
don't
almost
hit a
looks
hog.
like a G.I. Joe character in that scene.
Yeah, she does, man. It's a cool looking scene. I love some of the costume choices. That it really is juxtaposed well with the action that's called for. I even like it when she calls it out in the movie. If I'd known I was going to be double crossed, I would have worn something different. It's kind of cool.
It was really good. Everything about this is from cinematography, production design, and everything. It is so on point with what it actually should be. It never feels like it's stretching, but it also never feels like it's falling short either.
Now, there's one scene that after seeing the movie, I don't quite think it was a wise scene to put in there. But when she goes to the wall and she walks up on that platform and talks to John Goodman's character, Kurtzfeld, that's it. And she's talking to him and he's laying. They're the only two people there. So knowing how this movie resolves, that interaction doesn't make sense unless that's just the way she's telling the story and we suddenly have an unreliable narrator.
I think that's
which changes everything.
I think that's the case in a lot of this stuff. Is really comes down to unreliable narrator. And again, one of the things that makes me, at the end of this thing, I was like, I want to go back and watch this, at least another time or two to kind of catch everything again, because that's what I think was nice. It's a chess game. It's great.
But it's really, really dangerous territory, though. Once you introduce an unreliable narrator, then the whole movie loses a certain measure of validity, because if we can't trust her, like we understand she's not going to tell everything that happened, but we have to believe that what she tells us really happened, or else she might have just got hit by a streetcar. That's where all the bruises came from, and she's made this whole story up to cover it. You know what I mean?
What did that streetcar guy have on her?
I don't know. But anyway, that scene, I think it would have served the movie better to have played that scene differently. Maybe have Toby Cooper. Is it Toby Cooper? Is that his name?
Cooper.
Yeah. Cooper Jones. I don't know his name.
Jones.
But, yeah, Toby Jones. I'm thinking of the director of Poltergeist or something all of a sudden, or Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Both.
But if they had maybe Toby's character up there instead of John Goodman's, then that, I think, fixes that part of the movie. Because that scene causes me to say, well, am I just watching a fairy tale? If they're the only two on here, why aren't they having a different conversation? I think that's introducing dynamite to your plot that could blow up in your face by even having that scene there. So I think from a storyteller's perspective, I would have cut that or had it be someone other than John Goodman there.
And I'd have to go back and watch it again, but I think you may not even need that scene, period. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I kind of think that too. I think it's set there to make us think, oh, she really hates the CIA, so that the end's supposed to have more punch to it, but it actually undermines the ending with me a little bit.
Maybe
there's a lot of things
method
at the end of this movie without, and I'm going to try to be as general as we can because we don't want to spoil a bunch of stuff for people, but I just don't understand people's motivations by the end of this movie. When the final turns happen at the end here, well, then why did you do all that stuff before?
Well, I understand to a degree. And once again, I don't know how much do we want to tiptoe around or how much should we just say, from here on out, it gets sketchy. If you don't want to listen, we'll give you a 3-second warning or something. But I understand everything except for why the ultimate secret is even a secret in the first place.
Right. I know exactly what you mean.
Because I can understand everything up to that point.
No, I don't think you're wrong in that assessment, but to me it was another kind of like, oh, I liked it.
And I don't know. Okay, man, I want to ask a question, but I don't even know if asking this question is going to be serving as too much of a spoiler. Okay, so what should I do?
So what we'll do is we'll go ahead. We'll say from here on out, fast forward 2.5 minutes into the thing, and then we'll, because we're about to wrap up the show anyhow. If you don't want to be spoiled, come back with us next week. We'll talk to you then. If not, keep on keeping on. But I don't know how much it could really just kill anybody's acceptance of it, but you've been warned.
Okay, so the one thing I think, knowing that the source material was written by a Brit, is that maybe that final turn is trying to say from his perspective that MI6 is being double-crossed by the Americans just as much as the Russians, and that they might have been the only potentially noble party in this whole thing, despite Percival's bizarreness, which he, wasn't as bad of a traitor as we thought, but he was still a traitor.
Yeah.
The part I don't understand is when it turns out that she has all the information.
Yeah.
And she gets it from Percival.
Yeah.
And then the other flip happens. Then why bother trying to save Percival after you have the information already?
She never really tried to save Percival. Her goal was to kill Percival by the end.
Gotcha.
I mean, she had no intentions. I don't think she ever intended for Percival to leave Berlin alive from the moment she got there. But once, he hurt her girlfriend or her casual encounter friend, then that made it clear that he was going to die.
Her misconnections on Craigslist friend.
Yeah. And also the fact that he double-crossed her. If there was any chance she wasn't going to kill him, she was definitely going to kill him. Once she knew he had seen the list and knew her third layer secret, she knew she was going to kill him. There was no way that both her and Percival were going to be able to leave Berlin alive. It was going to be one or the other.
You were the raven-haired girl in the club. I was the blonde-headed assassin.
Can we still be spoilery here? Because I got one more question.
All right, one more.
I just skip it?
Bring it on.
Why would the U.S. agency even want to plant somebody in MI6? I don't get that. Why not just let her be an American agent pretending to be British? I mean, the organizations cooperated. That part didn't make sense to me. And once again, I put that back on paranoia of the original writer of the comic book, perhaps.
Or we may have to wait for the sequel.
Well, The Coldest Month is the sequel.
Oh, is that right? Okay,
I don't know if they'll ever make a movie. But I don't know. Felix Leiter never had to pretend to be MI6 to work with James Bond, so I didn't know.
Right.
Well, we got to get down to it, everybody. Show's coming to a close, but we can't have this show close out without asking ourselves one of the most important questions anybody can ask themselves is how does this movie relate to the most magnanimous man in the history of our planet, Sylvester Stallone?
Thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement.
Oh.
David Leitch is the director of Atomic Blonde. He started as a stuntman, and I did a little digging. Turns out that he was the stunt double for Brad Pitt for a bunch of years, which I would imagine is something that gets people to listen to you. For instance, if you're at a dinner party, some guy keeps talking about how much he spent on his new HVAC, and you're David Leitch, you say, hey, I was Brad Pitt's stuntman, and instantly people will forget about that idiot who was talking about his HVAC. Why do I bring this up? Because I'm the HVAC guy. David Leitch has been around Hollywood for so long that one of his first jobs was stunts on the pre-South Park movie Orgasmo. He also worked on the TV movie Chips 99, which I didn't even know was a thing that existed until today. Fight Club, Ocean's 11. This guy has done some really cool stuff. But he's also been Jean-Claude Van Damme stunt doubles, working on movies with titles you've never heard of, like The Order and In Hell. So, yeah, he's paid his dues. He moves up from stuntman to stunt coordinator to action choreographer, and then comes John Wick. He directs a bunch of scenes from that movie because the whole movie is basically an action set piece on top of an action set piece, and he blows up. Now, everybody wants the secret sauce that lies within of David Leitch, which sounds dirtier than I meant it. And he directs the new Deadpool short that if you're listening to this, you've seen and you like it, and it lands him the movie Atomic Blonde and Deadpool 2. Now, Atomic Blonde isn't going to make anyone's best of 2017 lists, but it doesn't have to. It's not that kind of movie. All it has to do is be pretty good, and it is pretty good. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Deadpool 2 is going to be a movie made by committee, and while it's not going to take the world by storm like the original did, it's also not going to be like Son of the Mask. And I hope I really, really, really offended some Jamie Kennedy fans out there that like that movie, because if you do, we simply cannot be friends. The thing that happens with a lot of stunt guys is that they end up acting in a lot of movies just for ease of use. If there's a scene where Johnny Knoxville has to punch a guy in the face, it's better to have that guy be a stunt man so you don't have to hire 2 different people for Johnny Knoxville to punch in the face. And that is what happened to David Leitch. He's got 18 acting credits on his resume, and he's acted in everything from Power Rangers, the TV show, to a few of the Bourne movies. And then he also acted in 2013's Escape Plan, where he played the role of second lieutenant. Escape Plan is the first movie that finally paired up Stallone and Schwarzenegger and did well enough there's going to be Escape Plan 2 that no one asked for. Stallone himself wanted 50 Cent for this movie and actually offered him the role in Expendables first, which 50 Cent turned down. And I personally find something very charming about Stallone trying to be buddy-buddy with 50 Cent, kind of like your old uncle trying to be cool around your friends in high school. Imagine Stallone walking up to 50 Cent and saying things like solid and bro, trying to seem cool around 50 Cent. Escape Plan feels like one of those movies that I may run across someday and go, oh, it's that movie. And feels like most people probably are the same way about this thing. I don't know how many people are fired up for a yet third Stallone in a prison movie. It's getting to the point where in the 90s, you'd see Wesley Snipes in what felt like 6 or 7 different movies where he's jumping out of airplanes. You know what, Wesley? We get it. You like to jump out of planes. And there you have it, Percival and Merkel. This week's Stallone connection. Now, can we get back to reviewing movies that people actually know as a comic book property?
Why not? We'll see what we can do next week. Stay tuned.
Next week, the horror film Abattoir.
Ooh. All right. So here on Hero Movie Podcast, we have our own patented Robin rating system. If you'd like to do that, you can go on down to Facebook.com/Hero Movie Podcast and join one of the over 2,000 people that have liked us on Facebook, and you'll see it right there at the top of the screen. Bruce, where does Atomic Blonde fall in the HMP Robin rating system for you, sir?
I had a lot of fun. You know, I did have that one issue with the plot. The trailer maybe oversold it just a little bit, but it's still a lot of fun. I'm going to give it a solid Tim Drake. I'm going to rewatch this, and not just for those scenes we tiptoed around. I'm going to rewatch it for the action. But they should have had more Depeche Mode in the movie.
Fair enough. Keenan?
To me, it's a Damian Wayne all day. I don't know if it's middle Damian Wayne, but it's a Damian Wayne to me. I like it. Fair enough. When it, if I see it on TV or whatever, I will definitely stop and watch it for a bit. I don't know if this is one of those movies where I'm just going to instantly forget it later, though. That's the problem. It's not John Wick. John Wick is singular to me, but it's good. It's a good movie. It's just not great, and doesn't have to be. It's not that movie. So I'm going Damian Wayne.
Fair enough. I'm with Bruce here. I'm on the solid Tim Drake train. This is a movie that I went to with pretty low expectations. I thought it was just going to be a straight-up action movie, which I'm certainly fine with, but I got a lot more than I bargained for. It had a proper story. There was a lot of twists and stuff in it. I like things like that. Unreliable narrators are always kind of a fun thing. But for me, it went above and beyond all of my expectations. Maybe it was because I had them low, but man, oh man, it did it for me. So very solid Tim Drake for me as well. All right, everybody, that is it because, we do what we do. We can't go back to the same old all the time. You can't continue to do new releases because they just don't bloody well exist. However, next week we have something very interesting. Because the Amazon show is on the horizon, we needed to look back. We needed to look back a little bit to The Tick, the original series, the one that was on Fox. There was an animated one too. Well, there were 2 ones on Fox. One was live action, one was animated. We'll be doing the live action one, specifically episode 3 for those of you out there that want to play along with the show at home. And why wouldn't you? Because we're the best, right? Please say we're the best.
Yay!
Thank you.
We're the best.
So we'll be doing that.
And if only I had that kazoo.
Darn kazoo. I'm telling you, kazoo next week, buddy. In the meantime, Bruce, where can we find more of your work on the internet this week, sir?
Hey, go to Amazon. I've got all kinds of stuff there. Really trying to spread the word about Chubby Wizard, Wrath of the Manticore. It is now on Audible. A few folks have already checked it out. I actually have a few promo codes left over. I kind of put a little thing up on Facebook, told the Patreon folks about it. Still got a few. If somebody wants a United States promo code for a free audiobook download for Chubby Wizard, Wrath of the Manticore, just email me, laundryroombruce@gmail.com. I'd be happy to get it to you. And then in print, Dragon and Gallus, the sequel to Dragon and the Needles, is available. No audiobook on that one yet, but I'm working on it.
He's working on it, doggone it. And you just put out another episode of Heroes and Villains today with somebody I think you might have an affinity for.
Dr. Manhattan.
Is it at least 4 hours long, that episode?
No, it's a concise hour. It's not bad.
We just sometimes we got to rein them in a little bit there. Just go, Bruce. Walk back from that ledge there, buddy.
Wait till I do the comedian. That one will be forever.
Oh, that one. That's true. Keenan.
You can find me at Hero Movie Sean on Twitter, and I have a new project called Dog Eat Pod. It is a new podcast that hopefully will be on iTunes this week, but in case it's not, just go to doggypod.com and download some episodes. I will warn you, the first episode is terrible sound-wise because I was figuring it out, but the other ones are pretty good.
But content-wise is still good. If you get, it's a little, but content-wise, solid. Very solid. So check that out. Links, of course, will be in the show notes. And, of course, I am back to doing more work than I need to because I've got nothing else better to do with my life. So I want you to check out the Film Find again. We are back up and running. This week I'm going to have a special guest, Justin Mullison. Justin's been on Nerd Talk Now. He's also been on the Film Find previous times as well. And we're going to be talking War for the Planet of the Apes. And speaking of Nerd Talk Now, that is also up as well. We did a live stream last night. The audio version is going to be coming a little bit later, but it is up on YouTube and up on the Nerd Talk Now Facebook page, facebook.com/Nerd Talk Now, or just look it up on the YouTubes, man. And, of course, Preacher Podcast, that's still going strong as well, a little bit over halfway through the season 2. And we're enjoying it, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So keep on that one, guys. So, between the three of us, man, we got podcasts 7 days a week out here. So let's, I'm telling you.
True.
We're rocking and rolling over here. There's no better time to be aboard the HMP train, if you will. And thank you for the emails. If you want to email us, heromoviepodcast@gmail.com. Drop us a 5-star review on iTunes, a.k.a. Humdinger. And join us next week, of course, when we talk about Episode 3 of the live-action Tick. For Bruce Leslie, Sean Keenan, I'm Adam Portrais. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Evie.
Kriegsmänner